So in a business context, how would you define the word moat? Not boat, but moat with an M.
Moat.
A
A
moat.
moat is something that a business has that makes it difficult for competitors to compete or at least match.
Perfect. So going back, you're a bit of a history buff. Wasn't that your one of the things you studied in school? Was history?
I I did do quite a bit of history, yes.
Yes. So it at least from my perspective, words that we use today oftentimes have this original meaning that you can trace back to the initial use of the word. Let's talk about the initial use of a moat.
The initial use of a moat. We're talking about something around a fortification of some kind
Mhm.
to keep people from getting too close to the walls. I'm not actually sure if there's
Yeah,
a
like
older definition or not. I'd have to look that up.
yeah, I'm not sure I've ever heard of it in context before the kind of that dark ages, middle ages castle period where moat became a thing and a concept. I'd never heard of it anything before that, right?
Yeah, and I mean, because of popular culture, we always think that they have to be filled with water and alligators and sharks or whatever, but um, a lot of them were completely dry.
Mhm.
Um, it was really just a way to make the walls seem taller and to again keep people from being able to scale the walls using ladders or things like that.
And so initially it was a military defense.
Yeah, and if you look at castles that are still standing, I mean, d- compared to the number of castles in existence, I might be completely wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure that moats were actually relatively rare
Oh, okay.
compared to the like standard fortifications. Because you could think about the mechanisms of dealing with a bridge or like the traditional drawbridge. It's
Yeah.
like that's actually pretty complicated engineering to to build in the first place, let alone maintain, and especially in a war situation. So I mean, yeah, gates absolutely, but these more extensive, bigger fortifications weren't around every single castle or fort.
And if we draw that analogy forward again back to business, business is a bit of a battle, and you have different tools that help you stay competitive and keep market share. And a moat is also pretty rare to have a strong actual moat that's defensible. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would, and I think a lot of it comes down to lack of intention or belief that it's even possible to build a moat.
Hmm.
Um, because again, there's a lot of different fortifications that can be built around a business, but it comes down to being aware of what's possible and then the intent. I mean, the the design of and then the design of fortifications changed over time as siege equipment changed. So like the walls had to be thickened, they had to be buttressed when cannons became more of a thing. Um, and the different designs of forts, like you've probably seen maybe like star forts versus just like a straight wall. They all serve different purposes to battle different types of enemies, and they change and adapt and expand throughout history to meet changing needs. And so a moat to be effective over time can't be static. You have to, whatever that defense is that you're putting around your business, you have to adapt with changing times as technology changes, as we learn more about how to deliver great value to people more quickly and efficiently. I mean, there's I mean nothing. You can't put something in place and expect it to work forever.
Right. I think personally one of the ones that stood out for a really long time has been Google's search dominance. And they had such a good product right out of the gate that they just were basically like a vacuum sucking up all market share. And then they kept growing and growing, and then pretty soon it became this snowball effect where they got so big that they just kept getting more and more of that momentum and
Well,
more
do
market
you remember
share.
what search was like before Google?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I remember one day I was sitting there at the computer and we're like, "Well, let's try dogpile." No, that didn't work. Okay, What's another one? Try this one. Okay. And that didn't work. And he's like, oh, I got this new one. It's called like, was it? Ask Jones? No, not Ask Jones. Ask Jeeves. That's it. Ask Jeeves. Try Ask Jeeves. And so we'd go, hey, that one's better than the other. But it took like 6 different search engines just to
Yeah.
try and find a page that had decent result or decent content that actually related to what we were looking for.
Right. So you'd surf the search engines to try and find one that gave you the results you wanted, and you'd go back, you'd go back like 2, 3, 4 pages sometimes on each one. And besides the fact that all of them had like big old flashing lights and banners, and like they were completely obnoxious. And
100%.
so then I get to, like, the first time I remember using Google, like this stark white page, a search bar, and a logo, and then the results that came up were better. I mean, but just the layout in general from the first time, it's like, wait a second, I'm not going to get a seizure from using this thing.
Absolutely. But they got to the point where it was Google, and then do we even want to think about anything else? And there was a few that had carved out small niches against it, but nothing that really was a strong competitor. And Google really had a moat in that they had high quality product and massive market share, and that humans had become conditioned to Google things. And so there,
Well, and
to
then
me, there was different layers
so,
to
yeah,
this
so they had
moat.
this network effect. They would become the default search engine on new devices.
Mhm.
They created their own operating system, which made them the default search on devices. I mean, they layered a number of different things that all contributed together. So I don't think there's anything you can say there was just one thing that they did that caused them to be able to rise to the top. They had to do a layered defensive strategy to be able to accomplish what they did. Because it's not just enough to be the best. As much as we like to think it is, and that business wins always on merit. I mean, a lot of time, at least on a single type of merit, like it requires findability almost more than anything in today's age.
Mhm.
And then you can be evaluated based on whether or not you're better than other people who are also findable.
And yet we we now get to the point where these other companies are coming in and just slicing chunks of search off from Google every day. And those companies are these AI companies where people have
Yeah.
found it's more comfortable to ask an AI for an answer than to go to the traditional Google route and go to the Google search engine and ask Google.
Well, especially because all Google's going to show you is content that was probably created with AI in the first place,
Well, that or ads.
or ads. Yes. Which again, yeah, Google kind of has had to lean into that, and that's, AdWords is one of their key money makers. I believe it still is.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, search is so much more convenient through an AI. It's so much easier to find what you want, because you remember when you had to find the exact right keywords, get
Yeah.
and you had to try all the different kinds of keywords.
And
Now
the order of the words, if you
yep, and
put
all
the
that mattered.
word in the wrong order, oh man, you were toast.
And so now, like, I don't even have to know the exact words. I can like describe it in the completely roundabout way, and the AI will be like, "Well, I think you're asking about this. Is that what you're looking for?" Yep, it is, and tell me exactly what I need to know. Um, and I, most of the time with as much accuracy as what I would find if I dove right into a page of content about it.
Mhm.
So
And
yeah, the
so
tools.
really this idea of the moat is much like you were describing earlier, where it can't be static because something's going to innovate, and innovation will come in and make all of those old defenses completely useless. In today's world, a moat and a wall and a drawbridge and a gate, they do almost nothing to protect against real threats. Just like for years Google had built all these layers, and yet something was still able to come in and just start slicing chunks off from their search.
Well, it's like that completely different technology. You think about today, the one of the biggest defensive issues that military or more civilian security forces have is drones, like these quad rotors that can be fitted with just about anything and sent to, for surveillance, for destruction, for whatever. And
At
it's
dirt
and they're so
cheap
cheap.
prices. Yeah.
Yes. So they can swarm in. So like even if you have some kind of drone defense, like do you have enough when somebody can spend a few $1,000s and send 100 drones your way? Like it's it's completely changed the paradigm. And I think that's what it's like, going from, or go back to like a historical reference, like the crossbow, for example, made long range combat much easier because the crossbow's simple to use, simple to train on. It doesn't take years of expertise to become proficient with it, like a longbow did. Um, and and the crossbow also at the right range had more power than somebody could get with the typical bow, which then also invalidated the armor that knights would wear. So in many places, crossbows were illegal, because
Because they're
it
too good.
completely they were too good. I mean, and you see that today with modern, like the rent-seeking behaviors that many companies have, attempting to get the government to bring regulations into whatever they're doing in order to make it more difficult to build that arbitrary moat of legality and protections to keep competitors out as well. I mean, it's just, but again, being pragmatic, if you've got a multi-billion-dollar corporation, you've got the clout to create this arbitrary moat using the government to do so. I mean, it's hard to fault somebody for doing it, as much as you might think it's wrong.
Well, I'll tell you what, you don't need to be a multi-billion-dollar company. I'm in the Boise area, and I was
Hmm.
talking to a guy who had moved up from California recently, and he was bemoaning the fact that in Idaho, there's not laws and rules and regulations that make it difficult for people to start a pest control company in Idaho. He said, way it's way too easy for people to do that. And in California, the bar was so high to start one that you didn't have to be very competitive once you were established because there was only a few companies that could get through the red tape. So the trick was just get through red tape, and then you could have a decent amount of market share because California restricted the ability to compete so severely with its rules. And he was bemoaning that Idaho had a much more free enterprise system where government wasn't restricting the number of companies that could come in and compete against each other. And he thought that that was the greatest thing ever because it made it so easy for him to start a company and be successful because he didn't have to learn how to innovate. He didn't have to learn how to be better than his competitors. He didn't have to worry about someone frogging him with new services because you'd get 10 or 20 of these companies. They'd all establish, they'd all get about the same market share or
They'd
approximately
meet once a
relative.
year in a dark room, and
And literally that was how he was describing business in California for a small business owner. And so to me, when you have
that's
that
fair.
government putting this almost, it's almost like they're putting mud in the road to slow everybody down. It's going to slow down innovation. It's going to slow down the ability for someone's defensible moat to be broken by someone else's new innovation. And that is the exact opposite of what we as entrepreneurs should be wanting, because there's always, as things level up, the world gets better and better and better. And the end result is the customers get a better product. And we as business owners always have a new opportunity to leapfrog forward and jump ahead of our competitors to offer something better for the customers.
Yes, we can always have that opportunity, but it's also a burden that we take on. I mean, it's challenging. And so again, I look at that, and it's, from one perspective, it's hard to fault somebody for wanting to have that level of protection around their business, so they could sit back and be lazy and still, like you say, not have to innovate, not have to strive, not have to raise the quality of service or anything in order to be able to make money.
Speaking of
I'm not even.
protection, I was talking with an old timer who was doing business in California, and he moved his operations into Vegas. And he had this innovative solution that would help restaurants. And so he started selling it, and he said he sold 5 of them of these systems, and they were pretty expensive to install and maintain, but it would make it so that there was a lot less problem with waste treatment. And he sold 5 of them right away, and then all of a sudden he got a phone call, and the phone call was from somebody with a lot of power, and they said, "Hey, in Las Vegas, that's not how we do it. We do it this way." And he said, "Yes, sir. I will remove my systems immediately." And he quit doing business in Las Vegas. And, it was because the people that provided protection didn't want him there.
Right. Yeah, it's not always formalized government that can do that. I've heard similar stories about other places, but Vegas is one that I've heard other stories about with similar things. So yeah, but being a business owner can be it can put a crosshair on your back depending on what you're doing. Um, at the same time, that's kind of who we are in spirit as entrepreneurs. Is like we're willing to deal with that, and oftentimes we're willing to push through and fight. Um, and if we don't, I mean, unfortunately, a lot of those fights may end up not going anywhere, and then and the business owner doesn't have anything to show for it when we should be cheering them on and helping them. But again, we're pragmatic people. We vote with our dollars. I mean, you have people who I love to see people who rail against big box stores that have no issue buying things on Amazon now. At the end of the day, it's hard to argue with convenience. Like when you can order something and have it show up at your home faster than what you could go to the store and get it yourself for, and you didn't have to leave, and the cost is as good or better. It's like how do we say that that's not an improvement to our standard of living?
And certainly there's some aspects that were lost because of that innovation, and I think a lot of people that do rail against it will rail against the pieces that were lost. They don't now have a personal relationship with the person dropping the product off.
Right.
But at the same time, when you look at any innovation, there's always something that gets lost as a part of that innovation.
That's
But
the point.
right, that is exactly, that is the point of innovation, is to lose the way that we used to do something in favor of a new way. And I think that from my perspective, a lot of business owners get so caught up in the daily minutia of running the business that they've really taken the entrepreneur hat that helped them start the business, and they've set it over on a hook off to the side, and they forget to put that innovative entrepreneur hat back on. And because they leave that hat off to the side and they're wearing maybe the operation hat, or maybe they're wearing the sales hat, or maybe they're running the administration hat all day long, they forget that they need to keep putting that hat back on to see how they can innovate so that they have an opportunity to go out and grab more market share. And then when they're wearing all those other hats, they start complaining that other people are innovating and it's just too hard to run a business because they're not in that daily grind of trying to make it better for their customers.
Well, that's really I think it's really the crux of the conversations. Like when you talk about ancient fortifications, those changes happened over decades or and centuries. Like it wasn't from one day to the next that things changed, but in our modern business context, that's what we're seeing. Like from one year to the next, there is some aspect of business that has completely transformed, and not just a marginal improvement, but something that's very very different. And especially with the rapid advancement of AIs and automation, it it really does change the dynamic of how we have to react to that and how important it is to keep that creative hat on more often. Um, but as you know, like we work with business owners on a regular basis, and we all get comfortable working with the things that we're good at, and we fail to pay attention to those other aspects of business.
100%. Yep, 100%. I was guilty of that not too long ago myself. A couple of years ago, I grabbed on to some ideas and some concepts, and I developed them out extremely quickly. And within a matter of a handful of hours, I had developed some new tools that made my business so innovative compared to everybody else that we could do things in 5 minutes that literally used to take us several hours. And I mean, it was awesome and great innovation. But then I just sat back and congratulated myself on how innovative I was. And for the next year and a half, I was like, I'm pretty awesome. I'm pretty awesome. Yeah, I'm great. And then I go to this meeting with a group full of entrepreneurs and they're talking and I'm like, "Oh my goodness. I was innovative 2 years ago. Now now I've fallen behind the times because I was so busy patting myself on the back that I didn't keep innovating." And that meeting was a real wake-up call of, wait a second, if I wanna keep being ahead of the curve, I can't stand there patting myself on the back. I've gotta jump back in and figure out a way to make that part of the routine all the time, not just every year and a half or 2 years.
Yeah. So when you think about that, you've labeled one thing. Just a second. You've labeled one thing that we can do to make sure we keep that entrepreneur hat on, which is interact with other people who are pushing and innovating. I mean, those social connections can be huge for expanding our mind about what's possible. So what else? Like how else can somebody keep that creativity live and active?
So, I actually wanna call out the exact opposite of that because I'm a part of another group, and
Okay.
this other group, I was sharing some information, and I got reprimanded by the leaders of that group because I was being too innovative in the information I was sharing. And this other group didn't want innovation, they wanted indoctrination, and they wanted me to share indoctrination praising this group and teaching about this group, not teaching people how to actually improve and to see what's on the horizon and what's coming. They just wanted me to be sharing how amazing this group is. And so if we're not careful, we may think we're in a group that isn't pushing the envelope, but really that group may simply exist to promote the group, and then you're stuck in this echo chamber of what has been. But it sounds new and innovative because they're explaining it in new ways. So there's a massive difference, and I didn't even realize it until I got in trouble for sharing innovative information in a room that wasn't accepting of it.
Wow. So what I'm hearing is like, yes, being a part of a group can be super valuable to help with that creativity, but it has to be the right group. It's not
100%.
just being part of any group.
Yep, yep. And you
So
can't the one of the values that this group holds is they call it tradition and innovation. Well, they don't want the level of innovation that I'm trying to bring to the group. They want just the tradition. And
tradition and innovation. That
yeah,
that's a pretty clear oxymoron in my
2
mind.
diametrically opposed items, but
Yes.
they say that you build off from your tradition and that allows you to leverage innovation. I don't know how they came up with it. Like, I agree with you. So,
Yeah, one is a static way of being. We do this, we talk about why do we do this? Well, tradition.
right.
It's like
Because my grandpa did it,
or the story that's shared all the time about the ends of the roast being cut off.
right?
It's like, well, I don't know why. That's just how we do it. Tradition. My mother did it. Well, my grandmother did it. Well, why did my grandmother do it? Because it didn't fit in the pan. Her pan wasn't big enough. It's like traditions never. I I mean, if you don't know the reason why, they're like for me, traditions have to be chosen intentionally. Like there are traditions that I do, but it's because I've looked to the root of why does that tradition exist, and I've decided for myself that it's something that's worthwhile and it's worthwhile to continue doing.
So,
Which
do you ever eat cold cereal?
on occasion
And when you do you pour milk on it?
I do.
And is that a
Yes.
tradition? Have you ever tried pouring orange juice?
I have tried pouring other things on it on occasion, maybe orange juice. It just doesn't work.
It doesn't. but you cannot maintain the tradition intentionally without having explored other options. Even
Right.
if it's as silly as I'm pouring milk on my cereal. My grandpa would always drink a cup of half and half. And that was his tradition, but he picked that tradition deliberately because he loves drinking half and half. And that tradition didn't carry on to any of his children because they, I guess, don't like drinking half and half.
Yeah. So being intentional about what we carry forward. But I want to go back to this ability to keep a mind of innovation, keep that entrepreneur hat, put it back on occasion instead of getting stuck in these ruts. Um, I would say that another way to do that is with the books that we read, and probably the
Absolutely.
same caution that goes with picking the right group. You've got to pick the right books that are actually going to open your mind up as opposed to help it to close down. I mean, we don't want echo chambers, and that could, and the right books for you could probably depend on who you are. I mean, it does not. I don't feel that I've ever been harmed by reading something that I disagreed with.
Hmm.
In fact, reading things that I disagree with has forced me to be like, well, I disagree with that, but why? And
Well,
to really drill in and either
yeah.
change my thinking or become more confident in the way that I already do.
If you only read what you agree with, you'll never innovate.
Right.
Yeah.
So what else besides people and books? Like what else can we do? And,
So
and
I
you're
I think anytime we're put into a circumstance that's uncomfortable, we're forced to address that discomfort.
okay.
And so that could be me going into a group that is talking about how they're innovating. It could be picking up a book and reading it. It could be going and listening to an audiobook, could be podcast, it could be presentations, it could be just going out and looking at what your competitors are doing.
So what I
The
what I see is like your necessity can come on us by choice, or it can be forced on us. And
Yeah.
necessity is a mother of invention. And so like you can create a problem because you choose to go and tackle something, or it's forced. Either way, that situation can force you, if you don't just stick your head in the sand and try and ignore it, um, it forces you to innovate.
And then the other that I think is the most powerful is to go out and intentionally try and find a problem. So, for example, I didn't come by that innovation 2 years ago accidentally. I was looking at the workflow in a business and I thought, "Why does it take so many hours to do this one job? And why is it that it's the point that we get stuck on over and over and over when we're trying to do our job?" And I said, "What would it look like if we could remove all of the pain from that?" And then from there, I came up with a plan of maybe I could try A, B, C, and do these things. And instead of doing it the way we've always done it, we can do it these new ways. And then I built the tool that would allow us to facilitate that. And within that short period of time, I went from discovering what I would call a problem that I wanted to change, addressed a number of potential options, picked a few, tried it, refined, adjusted, adapted, and then I pushed it out to production. And that was the real process to maintain an innovative mindset. It was actually looking for a problem to solve.
Right. So again, whether it's forced on you or whether you choose to chase it. So in order to be able to chase a problem, would you is it necessary to have a vision for what you want to create?
Hmm. Hmm. That's a chicken and egg question, I think, because
Is it?
you can either see how things are running today and say, what could we do differently? Or you could start out with a blank canvas and paint a picture of what you want and then compare it to what you have today and see where you need to adjust. And I don't know if one's better than the other.
Hmm. I would say in my experience, it is much easier if you have a vision, because that not only acts as a way to give yourself a target for what to focus on, but it also gives you a filter of what to ignore.
I think I'm saying, does your vision come from you staring at a blank canvas of ideal, or does the vision come from staring what you have now and asking what can be better? I
I
think
don't know
either
that it
way you can
matters.
get a I agree. That's what I was saying earlier. You can get
Yeah.
an ideal of where it should be, but there's different ways that inspiration could come to a person.
Maybe that's where
And
that tradition to innovation comes from. It's like we look at
maybe.
what we have, and then we look how we can make it better.
Hmm.
As as
I'll
long
have
as
to
we're
go
not
back
really
and see. Yeah, who knows? But I do know we are out of time, and our tradition
okay.
is to stop when we're out.
Well, let's stick with that tradition. Thanks.
Thanks. See ya.